Payment reconciliation might not sound exciting. It's kind of boring and super complicated. It totally gets lost next to cool stuff like digital wallets or AI fighting fraud. But here's the thing. None of those shiny new trends actually work if reconciliation isn't properly done behind the scenes. For travel companies, where payments bounce around between agencies, airlines, and hotels, nailing reconciliation is a must. So, how do you get it right? Let's get into the details. People often think reconciliation is just about matching the money received with the corresponding sales record. But it's more than that. It goes through the whole payment journey, from where a customer makes a purchase to the intermediaries deducting their margins to suppliers finally receiving money for services. It includes recording everything correctly in accounting systems and making data available for financial reports. This description is an overview at 30,000 feet. Reconciliation in travel is much more intricate. The travel industry is unique when it comes to the number of payments and players involved in a single purchase. For a traveler booking a holiday package on an OTA website, say a flight, hotel, and transfer, it seems pretty simple. One booking, one payment, one confirmation. But in the background, it gets complicated. The end-to-end travel payment process has many points where things can go wrong and mess up your financial records. This can lead to revenue leakage and, even worse, a loss of trust and damaged relationships with suppliers.
If you can't reconcile, you can't pay them. And if you don't pay them on time, they're not going to give you the best rates. They're not going to want to work with you anymore. On some occasions, if you're not on top of your data and your payments and your information, you may not be making payments to hotels, and they may not have fantastic reconciliation on their side. And it could take weeks or months for that to be discovered.
Gordon Mitchell is account director at Modular, an all-in-one platform for daily business payments. So, what can we do to avoid bad outcomes? To get to the bottom of most challenges, let's dive into the travel payment flow, which breaks down into two layers: pay in and pay out. Suppose the traveler books a trip with a credit card. Card payments are usually reconciled in batches. At the end of the business day, payment processors group all the authorized transactions, check everything for accuracy, deduct transaction fees, and settle the final amount to the agency's account, usually within 48 hours. The agency then gets a consolidated report and checks it against the total transaction amount in the accounting system. If everything matches up, great. If not, it'll take some time to track down the errors. But except on rare occasions that need additional investigation, the batch process works as expected, providing an efficient way to close the books. Here's the twist. Nowadays, most travel agencies aren't using credit cards exclusively. They're offering multiple payment methods. This definitely helps attract more customers, but it also complicates the reconciliation. It was way simpler when cards were the only option.
In one go, all the transactions that were part of the settlement file, all the sales, all the refunds could be ticked off saying, okay, this total amount is correct. All of these have been reconciled. Then local forms of payment, alternative forms of payment came up. And first of all, the timelines were different and the report files were different, so that there was no batch mechanism anymore. So merchants as airlines and travel agencies needed to start thinking in a transaction reconciliation model.
Paul Van Alphen is a travel payment strategist and managing director at Up in the Air, a travel payment consultancy. With transactional reconciliation, every payment is tracked and verified individually. This is how instant payments work. All the matching happens in real time as the transaction occurs. So, unlike batch processing, there's almost no delay between the traveler making the purchase and the agency receiving the funds. Sounds great, right? The tough part is that the agency has to check every single transaction internally, instead of just comparing the consolidated report with the total amount. This adds an administrative burden, which grows as the number of sales increases. Consequently, depending on whether it's a card or something else, agencies handle reconciliation either in batches or individually. And each new payment method brings its own reporting format, transactional fees, and settlement times. Payments could hit the agency's account in seconds with instant payments, within 48 hours for credit cards, or take up to 5 business days with an electronic check. When dealing with international customers, the timing gap can stretch up to 7 business days due to currency conversions, local regulations, and cross-border fees. Besides, banks and payment service providers may delay settlement for more than 2 weeks to mitigate credit risks or help back a percentage of sales to cover possible chargebacks and refunds. In most cases, agencies can't afford to wait that long. They need the cash up front to pay suppliers.
If you're a travel intermediary, you have actually 2 sides of reconciliation. You have the pay-in reconciliation and you have the payout reconciliation. And that's comes with a very close eye on the cash management, making sure that there's sufficient funds and credit available, in that window to pay out these suppliers.
Cash management for card payments can be tough. Many card issuers require money to be loaded onto a card well before the payment is due, tying up funds for travel businesses across multiple pending payments. Gordon Mitchell calls this a waste of resources. That's why Modular set up its travel payment system using its own electronic money accounts, so cards only use funds when needed. Clearly, pay-in reconciliation is a tricky process. But payout reconciliation, where the agency matches the single traveler's payment with several outbound payments made to suppliers, is even more complicated. So, our traveler bought a flight, a transfer, and a hotel in one transaction. Imagine that the flight in the package comprises 2 legs, each operated by a separate airline. One wants to be paid via IATA BSP cash, while another doesn't participate in the IATA BSP and willingly accepts virtual cards. And it's only one segment of the entire trip. The agency then needs to secure a transfer from the airport to the end location, which, for example, can be done via invoice. The OTA covers the cost by bank transfer after the service is delivered. And there's also a hotel to pay for.
There's multiple ways in which that can happen. So that could be a prepayment hotel, which is non-refundable, or it could be a hotel that you pay on departure. So where a invoice is then sent to the travel intermediary. So you've got these multiple ways of making payments, all for one booking. And all of these need to be reconciled back into one ledger, essentially. So,
next challenge, invoices from different hotels might look totally different. You've also got to account for currency rate fluctuations if you're working with international partners. See how many things the agency has to juggle? The payment scenario can be even more complex. For example, if a single booking is split between a group and everyone pays with a different method, or if there are cancellations and service failures resulting in refunds and chargebacks.
There's definitely lots of challenges, so lots of exceptions if it's around refunding or chargebacks, partial refunds, tickets not being issued because the seats was not available anymore. So probably the 90% that works right the first time, that's okay. But then the 10% that consists of exceptions, that's typically where the pain points are.
If you think reconciliation is only a problem for the merchant model, where the reseller takes charge of the entire payment process, you'd be wrong. In the agency model, where suppliers collect money from travelers, you still have the reconciling commission headache. Commission reconciliation is complex, especially in a fragmented industry like hospitality. It relies on multiple isolated systems, including booking platforms, CRS, PMS, and back-office tools, each treating and mapping data in its own way.
In airlines, it's much more streamlined because everything runs through IATA. That is not the same for hospitality, and that makes commission reconciliation much harder, right? Hotels might be presented differently in different distribution channels and in different distribution contexts. Guest names might be spelled differently. A confirmation number is not unique across the value chain. Every single system has their own version of a confirmation number. And that kind of leaves the life cycle very difficult to interpret for the same booking.
Knut Erik Reef is Vice President of Product at Onyx CenterSource, technology provider for commission payments in hospitality. The lack of data integrity makes it hard to tie the commission to the correct booking and leads to missing payments. For example, an agency may believe it's received money for transaction X, but in reality, it was for Y. Not only does this mess with the overall revenue collection, but it can also lead to tax penalties.
I think another aspect that continues to rise is the introduction of electronic invoicing for indirect taxes, which apply to commission revenues. That is a trend that we've been seeing over many years, and it's a field in which Onyx has invested quite heavily over the last few years at least. And that is imperative in the commission reconciliation topic from the perspective of being able to allocate taxable revenues from non-taxable revenues so that we avoid penalty taxation.
So the agency model has its unique reconciliation challenges, and many resellers mix and match both models, acting as merchants or agencies depending on suppliers. Now, think of thousands of bookings to be reconciled every single day, and a portion of these will end up with paybacks and disputes involving extra checks. That's the reality behind the scenes.
And in the end, reconciliation needs to bring that all together and make sure that nothing falls between the cracks, that there's no revenue leakage. There's a lot of variables in the equation that requires a lot of organization and automation to do it properly.
So, how can the reconciliation process be organized to make financial dots meet? Today, reconciliation in most travel agencies is a mix of manual work, spreadsheets, and software tools. The level of automation depends on the business size and may cover up to 80% of operations in large agencies. Anyway, there's much room for improvement. Let's see what can be done. Many agencies are actively enhancing the front end of the payment process, meaning they add new trendy payment methods to their portfolio and take care of the user experience at checkout. This makes sense since more and more travelers prefer the convenience of digital wallets or would like to split payments using buy now, pay later options. Unfortunately, agencies often lose sight of the backend part, which could be totally unready for nice innovations, such as transaction-based reconciliation or a new settlement format.
If you introduce new acquirers, new forms of payment, new value-added services at the front end, also the revenue accounting department on the airline side, the financial department on the OTA side, need to be able to deal with those reports, with those money movements, with all the elements that play a role in that. So that's a key element of designing a payment architecture, is not to only consider the front end, but do it basically at the same time also the backend and make sure that it's fully aligned.
The key to solving the reconciliation problem is assigning a unique reference number and consistent data to all inbound and outbound payments associated with the same purchase.
So that brings all of these different payments together, and it's really important that that information stays attached to each payment out and also each payment in. When you're talking about payments in as well, you're not always talking about just one individual payment. Quite often, people will pay a low deposit and then pay elements of the holiday back prior to departure. So it might be that there's one bulk payment at the beginning and then there's multiple payments coming in. So you've got a lot of moving parts, all that have to be pulled together into one record.
All parties must agree upon the reference number and make it visible in the reports generated throughout the booking lifecycle, ensuring that every money movement can be traced back to the original sale and original booking amount. Most transaction mismatches happen when there's not enough data. For example, if the unique reference number gets lost along the way, you can't properly match the payment to the original sale. The money isn't gone, but it takes extra time to figure out what the payment was for or where it is. But it's not just about the number. Having more details, like payment methods, flight info, hotel booking numbers, and even conversion rates, makes it way easier to match everything up.
Travel is unique in that daily reporting is required rather than something that's delivered weekly or monthly, such as a bank statement. Typically, a bank statement just doesn't contain the amount of data that's needed by a travel intermediary to balance their books. So that's why we need to deliver and build enhanced data solutions into all of our services that can be serviced back and connected very easily.
The agency model faces similar problems. Accurate data is crucial for commission reconciliation, but collecting and matching all reservation details can be another difficulty. How can resellers streamline this process?
Yeah, so obviously I'm a bit biased here, but I would encourage everyone to utilize a commissions payments processor. I think that would vastly benefit both payors and payees from an operational efficiency perspective. That will allow them to benefit synergies of scale, both in cross-border payments and foreign exchange, which is again a big part of commission payments, as well as giving a more holistic overview in terms of reporting and analytics of what funds are actually going out, what is the actual cost of sale, what is the actual commission collection ratios on the receiver side.
So, when choosing a payment method or tech partner, ask, are they able to attach consistent information to transactions? Can they provide consistent data? What kind of reports will you get? How often? And how will you access it all? Even with all the tech advances, reconciliation is still mostly manual, often relying on spreadsheets. And let's be honest, spreadsheets are only as good as the data you put in them.
Often payment providers or tech companies will provide you information via a CSV, but even better is to be able to get that information via an API connection that you can then use a GET instruction and pull the information out of the API that you desire and you need for your reconciliation.
Virtual cards are also a powerful source of data. They show exactly where things break down between travel companies and suppliers, like when a payment gets declined by mistake. That insight helps both sides fix the problem and keep money moving without friction. And what about AI? How soon will it change reconciliation and help us forget those spreadsheets for good? AI is already making a big impact, especially in cleaning up data, matching transactions, and reporting. But it's not quite there yet in payment services, so stay hopeful and be patient. While AI isn't doing all the heavy lifting yet, check out our video on virtual cards, a B2B payment method that's already making reconciliation a little easier.